Good afternoon, everybody. Good to be here. Good to see you all here. ChicoX Ideas for the Future. I wonder how many things that are an everyday part of our reality today were suggested a little bit back in history and seemed to be kind of like an idea for a future. By definition, an idea for the future is going to sound, well, nuts. It's going to sound crazy. It's going to sound as if it is actually not taking into consideration the most basic, fundamental ways in which we think about life. Easy to find examples. Imagine the first people who began to have a conversation about, you know this thing with slaves, you know how we like bring all these black people from Africa and we treat them like things? Are they people? Maybe? Imagine the reactions that were, not so long ago in fact, brought up, the anger, the outrage actually, when first people began to suggest that maybe women weren't just dumb and incapable, but actually were just as capable as men and should be given education and should be given voting rights. These things sounded preposterous. Bold ideas, even when they come with all the evidence of the world, such as these examples that I just gave you, tend to come off that way. So the first thing you have to consider when you show up for a talk that's presenting bold ideas is that it's probably a bold idea if your guttural reaction says to you, oh my God, somebody lock that person up. Nutso. I'm here today to talk to you about penal abolition. Penal abolition is the very simple idea that the entire edifice that we use in this society to think about what's right and wrong, to think about how to respond to harms or what we call crimes, and by the entire edifice, I mean law, policing, courts, prisons, and everything that follows after that. I'm here to argue with you today that that entire edifice is not only the single most inhumane construction, maybe slavery and sexism would have to go first, but one of the top three in the history of humankind, and needs to be left in the dust bowls of history. In fact, I'm convinced that that's actually inevitable. As inventions, they're actually very recent. They're not that old. And they have been an absolute and profound failure, despite some wonderful things that have been accomplished with them. And we want to keep that perspective as I talk to you today. Law actually has been used effectively to get rights for non-white people, to get rights for women, to get rights for people who identify differently than the norms that our society likes to support. That doesn't mean it's widely or broadly been something that has contributed to our society more than it has taken. You can say the same thing, and I will be making some arguments to you today about policing, about courts, and about prisons themselves. Probably the best way to begin with a modern audience, the whole conversation of penal abolition, is to follow the facts. We're in a university too, that works well. What are the facts around the criminal justice system? The facts around the criminal justice system mostly lie around how people think about crime. And how people think about crime is that, well, basically, look, there's good people in life and there's bad people in life. And we have this criminal justice system because it's there to actually capture the bad people, put them through a process with constitutional guarantees and safeties, such that nobody by accident, or at least the smallest number possible by accident, is going to be innocently victimized, and they are then appropriately, these criminals are appropriately sent away. But that's not at all the reality. Countless research, books have been published on this topic. One of them is called Everybody Does It, which gives you a hint of where that is going, which essentially allows you to understand that if we think of human behavior as this realm between my two hands, there is a tiny sliver of people over here, and by tiny I mean very, very small, who are people who regularly throughout their lives commit crimes and harms. Tiny number. There's equally on the other side of this total realm of human behavior, regular measured human behavior, there's this tiny slab of people over here who never commit a crime, right? They somehow make it through their lives and they don't commit any crimes. Everybody else, 99% plus of us, go through life and within the span of a lifetime committing a variety of violent and non-violent harms. I'm talking 99% of the people in this room. You're all a bunch of criminals. Right? Let's see. 1 out of 4 women in this university is going to be sexually assaulted by the time she leaves. The vast majority of people routinely violate non-serious and serious driving laws, like driving intoxicated, or participate in illegal activities, such as drug use. The vast majority of human activity, by definition, entails a very large percentage of illegal activity. The global economic measurements show that more than 15% of the products of economic activity are lost to theft. Now, if you're thinking that that's a bunch of big crimes, no. The same report also details that the vast majority of that loss happens in single acts of theft by single normal people like you and me everywhere we go, in their little companies. So then this leaves us with a question. Well, if basically you're human, you're doing it within the span of your lifetime, you're committing both violent harms, crimes, and nonviolent crimes, harms, what the hell is the criminal justice system doing? I mean, it is literally the 3rd most expensive government program in the history of the planet. By the way, that's just the American one. What is this system doing? The empirical facts lay it down very simply. There is only one correct phrase to describe the criminal justice system. It is a selection process. You encounter and become part of the criminal justice system, if you are, because you are selected for it. And if you look at any prison population, for example, or any record of arrestees, or any record of people going through the courts, you will encounter, and it is no surprise to anybody here, who that is. Very likely your skin's not white, black or brown, most dangerous skin color to have. Very likely you're going to be from the underclass. Not the lower class, the underclass. They're even lower. So, we could sit here and we could go over all these things that you hear about. On occasion, we go through a time span where some things become problematic. You know, right now it's policing. Now everybody's talking about, oh my God, policing is so problematic, and look at all these shootings, and oh my God, the guy was just backing off and the cop killed his kid. That's this week. And all these stories are absolutely horrible, of course. Oh, we need to reform. Reform? Do you know what the first report on the first prison said? Which was in Philadelphia about 200 years ago. The first report said, this place, this prison, here in Philadelphia, jail is what's called, is such a disaster. All it is a breeding ground for criminality. People are just training each other in how to become better criminals. We're adding nothing to them at all. In fact, we're making them worse. It's a center of disease, still a problem. And we basically need to shut it down. That was the first report on the first prison. And of course, all of our institutions are similarly problematic. I don't have the time to tell you how you like to live in this fantasy of the court, there for your justice. And more than 90% of the cases never reach a jury because we don't have the money to pay enough for those cases. So we've created a culture where prosecutors have all the power. And what they actually do is create what they call a plea bargaining culture, where you got busted for driving drunk, and the DA comes up to you and says, well, I can charge you with 5 things, or, we'll go to jury and you'll probably get busted for 3 of them and do 15 years, or you can admit to 1. And you don't have money for a lawyer anyway, so off you go. You bust down to 1. Did we try you for your guilt or innocence there? That's happening more than 90% of the time. I wish I had the time to share with you more and more stories, but these are things that actually aren't missing, even from your own knowledge. If you look for 5 minutes, you will find story after story for any of the arguments that I present you with today. What is lacking is the bold idea for the future, which is, it is rotten to the core from the conception of law, which has always been a way for the privileged to codify their privilege and maintain it. It's things we talked about today, about banking, about the 1%, about how 80 people can own the same as 3.5 billion. I mean, there's 6 billion of us on the planet. Are you fucking kidding me? Right? I mean, are you kidding me? So, bold ideas is really the only way forward. And we're not always so fortunate as we are in the case of the criminal justice system to actually have all of the data be in support of us. And careful to keep things measured and balanced in your own mind. Penal abolition doesn't mean tomorrow you open up all the prison doors and you let everybody out, because this is about, hey, kumbaya, everybody's wonderful, people are great, yay, let's celebrate humanity. Not the argument I'm making. As I always tell my students, because I teach penal abolition and I write books and publish journals about penal abolition and such, as I always tell my students, if tomorrow they opened the prison doors of California and let everybody out, I'd be the first one across the frickin' border. Okay? I am not saying that there's not people that are not well, or people that are not well-intentioned. Hell yes. Of course, we need to be reasonable and protect ourselves and protect our community. But that's one thing, and the penal system is another. We need to wake up, look at what is staring at us brutally in the face, and recognize that 200 years from now, people are going to look back, the way y'all look back now at slavery, and say, what on earth were those people thinking? I mean, really, what argument was there that was good enough for them about this? Well, they were saying things like, really? You want to abolish slavery? Do you realize that that is the basis of our entire economic structure? And that you will economically collapse the country? That's what they were saying. Well, look at that. We pulled it off anyway. Look at that. America's still number 1, they say. Or What did they say for women? I'm out of time, I can't go on. They make the same things. Don't listen to the nonsense. Be bold, be brave, and be real. Look at what's staring at you in the face. And think 200 years from now, when they're going to look back and they're going to say, what on earth were these people thinking? I mean, really, racism to that level? Classism to that level? Violence done to individuals in cells as big as their bathrooms for year after decade? That's the way they dealt with what was an innate behavior to every single one of them? That was their solution? What on earth were these people thinking? Be bold, be brave. Thank you.